All right, it's 8:40, and every Monday we get a chance to talk to Jim Bacon from baconsrebellion.com, the website that covers a lot of stories you won't see elsewhere. And, Jim is also affiliated with the Jefferson Council, which is trying to save the University of Virginia, reform the University of Virginia. And I took note of this story you published about the report that has apparently been secret for over a year now about the young man who killed the football players. Everybody was so upset about the murders, as they should be, but then everyone's kind of gone quiet about what the report said. So good morning to you, Jim. I appreciate it. What's the scoop here?
Good morning, John. Well, like you said, this report into the which investigated not just the young man who Chris Jones, who committed the murders or has basically pled guilty to committing the murders, but what went wrong at the University of Virginia that in which the administration had all these red flags and failed to act.
Mm-hmm.
And
do we know that now? That's been my supposition since it occurred. Was we found out that he'd been the alleged murderer, the murderer, was said to have been carrying a weapon, and then they just, it seems, weren't aggressive enough about tracking him down to confront him about that. Do we know that's true? I think it's pretty widely acknowledged that he had firearms in his room, and so the issue is it's against university policy to have for anyone to have firearms on the university grounds, other than the university police. And so why did the authorities, they knew they had that report, why didn't they go check it out? And why didn't they do something? What went wrong? And so that's what the investigation was designed to look into. So the investigation took about a year, and then about a year ago, it was released to the university, and the university officials saw it. But although they initially said that they would release it to the public very shortly after they kind of had a chance to look at it, they changed their minds. And we've talked about this before. Their excuse was, well, we don't want to influence or jeopardize the criminal proceedings against Christopher Jones. And so, well, we'll release the report after the criminal proceedings are over. Well, so now a year has passed, and I guess in the last week or two, Jones he's pled guilty. So that's off the table now. I guess you can still argue that the criminal proceedings aren't totally over yet because of their sentencing. But it's hard to imagine. And what was it about an investigation into the university's behavior and the university's the problems the university experienced in following up and doing something about the warning signs? What was it about that would affect a sentencing hearing? So but now they're still holding off, and so now the latest is that maybe they'll release it in February. Now, what's interesting, the interesting update on this is that President Ryan actually has been kind of doing some proactive spin on the report, and he hasn't done this in a public setting. He's done it, but he did speak to the University of Virginia Faculty Senate, and he came up with this argument, I guess, or this background information, which no one has been aware of outside his narrow circle. And that is that there is a law in Virginia that prohibits firearms in public buildings. In any state of Virginia building, firearms are prohibited. But there is an exception that was passed for universities. Mm-hmm. And so his argument was that this loophole for universities prohibited
the university police from investigating Jones's room and presumably doing whatever follow-up needed to be done. And the only people who had any kind of remote possibility of having the authority to do that were with the Students Affairs. But hey, these are student affairs people. They're civilians. They're not trained in confrontations and potential confrontations. And so that's his argument why University of Virginia didn't do anything. So, although he didn't quite put it that way, but that is the circumstances that he was outlining, which is presumably, if that's the full story, would kind of sort of exonerate the administration from having failed to act.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's been the cynic in me says that's the strategy, is just run this out past the emotional reaction time frame, past the legal discussion, which I guess it could have got. The truth sometimes does complicate things. Finding out what really happened behind the scenes is really a complication that I think a free society should be worried about. So do we think that February this is going to happen? March?
I don't see how you could possibly deny it. Once the sentencing is over, I mean, there's absolutely no shred of a justification left for not releasing the report.
Do you think, Jim, though, I mean, let me back up for just a second, because when they said they didn't want to mess with the trial, that bothered me. Like, this is a report that's paid for by the taxpayers. It's a state school. What you've discovered in this investigation, I don't know whether the defense attorney, if I had been the defense attorney, I think I would have asked to see it. Like maybe there's something in there that would have some mitigating impact on the charges against my client. What am I missing there? Am I off on this, or is there something that would make you think that was legitimate to hold it back? That's weird to me.
Yeah, well, even the parents of the victims were saying, "Hey, release this report, release this report."
Right. Okay.
So they obviously haven't seen it, and presumably their defense attorney hadn't seen it. And one would think that if there was something in there that might influence the outcome of the trial, conceivably, that the defense attorney would have been entitled to see it as evidence. So yeah, it's not all adding up. I mean, I think Ryan has raised a point that's probably a semi-legitimate point, that there are complicating factors. It wasn't as if UVA just kind of was just like grotesquely, idiotically ignoring this thing. I mean, they had to wrestle with this issue of the legality.
But then at the same time, remember when you and I talked 2 weeks ago about the First Amendment and the kid who wore the Make America Christian Again hat, they didn't hold back from calling him in and talking to him about his hat. So apparently there's certain things that they're really sensitive about, and certain things that they're not very sensitive about. And I would have thought they would have been the opposite, like a gun and someone behaving erratically on campus. Yeah, that we probably need to take pretty seriously and get to the bottom of. Wearing a hat that says Make America Christian Again that looks like a Trump hat, it might offend me, but I don't know that I would prioritize that conversation since it is free speech. It's just weird, the mindset of this crowd.
Yeah, well, absolutely, John. And I think a lot of people who really want to see this report are thinking exactly like you. Yeah. And is that there's more to the story to come out. So I think Ryan's remarks, the faculty senate, would kind of represent his spin. Is kind of that's how he wants to frame the report when it comes out. But maybe that's a fair way to frame it, but we don't know until we see the report, and we hear a lot of kind of scuttlebutt, and it's only scuttlebutt, but that there's a lot more to come out.
I think the legislature needs to raise a little hell publicly and privately about this. And Jim Bacon, you have been on it from the beginning, so I appreciate that. baconsrebellion.com. Check it out, as I do every morning. Thanks, Jim.
Bye-bye, John.
8:50, back with more in a moment on News Radio WRVA.